It was a moonless night when Mark decided to take the long way home. He enjoyed driving. It gave him a sense of freedom and solitude. The empty road stretched out in front of him, flanked by dense forests on both sides. The only sound was the hum of his car's engine and the occasional chirping of crickets. Mark didn't mind the isolation. In fact, he relished it. Little did he know that his peaceful drive was about to turn into a nightmare. As he cruised down the road, Mark noticed a sign that read Old Route 66 Scenic Drive. He'd heard of this road before. It was said to be a beautiful yet eerie drive, seldom traveled these days. Curiosity piqued. He decided to take the detour. The moment he turned onto Old Route 66, the atmosphere seemed to change. The air grew colder, and the forest seemed to close in around him, the trees forming an almost impenetrable wall. Mark drove on, the road becoming narrower and more winding. He checked his fuel gauge and saw that he had more than half a tank left. He wasn't worried, however. A strange feeling of unease began to creep over him. The road, which was supposed to be scenic, felt more like a labyrinth designed to trap unwary travelers. The headlights of his car pierced the darkness, but it seemed as if the night was growing thicker, absorbing the light. As he shone the light on the engine, a sound caught his attention. It was faint at first, but it grew steadily louder, rhythmic thumping, like footsteps. Mark's heart began to race. He pointed the flashlight into the darkness but saw nothing. The footsteps stopped. He shook his head, blaming his imagination, and returned to the car. The engine wouldn't start. He tried several times, but all he got was a feeble click. Panic began to set in. He was miles from the nearest town, and there was no cell reception out here. Mark decided to walk back to the main road. Maybe he could flag down a passing car. He grabbed his jacket and started walking, flashlight in hand. The forest seemed even more oppressive on foot. The trees loomed over him, their gnarled branches like skeletal hands reaching up to snatch him. The only sounds were his footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves. After walking for what felt like an eternity, Mark realized he hadn't seen any signs of the main road. Had he taken a wrong turn? The path was barely visible now, overgrown with weeds and covered in fallen leaves. Mark's flashlight flickered and went out. He cursed and banged it against his hand, but it was dead. Darkness enveloped him, and he felt a surge of primal fear. He turned around, hoping to find his way back to the car, but the path had vanished. It was as if the forest had swallowed it whole. Mark's breathing grew rapid and shallow. He was lost. He pressed on, trying to stay calm, but the forest seemed to be toying with him. The trees seemed to shift and move, creating an ever-changing maze. Mark stumbled and fell, his hands scraping against the rough ground. As he got up, he heard the footsteps again, closer this time. He didn't dare call out, fear choking his voice. The footsteps stopped, and Mark strained his ears, trying to locate the source. A soft whisper reached his ears, unintelligible but chilling. He spun around, but there was no one there. He was completely alone in the dark, or so he thought. Panic turned into terror as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from all directions, echoing through the trees. Mark ran. He didn't know where he was going, but he couldn't stay there. Branches whipped at his face, and roots seemed to reach out to trip him. The whispers followed, growing louder and more frenzied. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, and his lungs burned. He didn't dare look back. Suddenly, he burst into a clearing. The moon, hidden for so long, cast a pale light on the scene. In the center of the clearing stood an old, dilapidated house. Mark hesitated, but the whispers were closing in. He had no choice. He ran to the house and flung open the door, slamming it shut behind him. The whispers stopped, and silence fell. A creaking sound made him jump. He turned and saw a door at the back of the room, slightly ajar. Summoning his courage, he approached it and pushed it open. The door led to a narrow staircase, descending into darkness. Mark hesitated. Something compelled him to go down, a morbid curiosity mixed with a sense of dread. He found a small room with a window. Outside, the forest seemed to press against the house, the trees whispering secrets to one another. Mark shivered and turned away. The room had an old bed, its mattress rotted and sagging. He sat down, trying to catch his breath. The silence was oppressive, but at least the whispers had stopped. Mark's eyes were drawn to a bookshelf filled with old, leather-bound books. He picked one up and flipped through it. The pages were filled with strange symbols and drawings of grotesque creatures. He dropped the book, a chill running down his spine. This place was wrong. He needed to leave, but the forest outside seemed even more dangerous. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more scary and thrilling stories.